Mike Tyson, the most feared man in boxing, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, a wrecking machine who destroyed his opponents in seconds. By 1990, Tyson wasn't just the best fighter in the world. He was invincible, undefeated, untouchable. He had beaten every man put in front of him until he met one who refused to fall, Buster Douglas, a fighter nobody believed in.
Well, in the important game of expectations, this fight is over before it begins or soon thereafter.
A 42-1 underdog, a man whose own trainers thought he was walking to his execution. But what happened that night shocked the world. Because on February 11, 1990, the most feared man in boxing was about to suffer the most humiliating loss of his career. But how? How did Buster Douglas, a man given no chance, pull off the greatest upset in sports history? Was Tyson unprepared? Was Douglas just better? Or was there something deeper behind this moment? Because just 23 days before this fight, Buster Douglas's mother died. And before she passed, she told everyone her son was going to win.
I called James and I said, let's cancel the fight. He said no.
I was more determined. I told him, I said, I'm all right. And I think that even helped the intensity even more.
He told me that she would want him to go on. He was very close to his mom. Before she had passed, she come to his house and she was real worried about him fighting Mike Tyson because she had heard what an animal he was. And he goes, no, I'm okay. I'm going to beat him. She had went and told one of her girlfriends, oh, Buster's going to beat Mike Tyson, you know? So that really gave him confidence too.
To understand this shocking night, we need to go back to the moment boxing's most terrifying champion was born. Before he was the most feared fighter on the planet, Mike Tyson was just a kid from Brooklyn, a kid with nothing except rage. By the time he was 13, Tyson had been arrested nearly 40 times. He wasn't just fighting on the streets, he was surviving.
Mike Tyson beat up a boy who stole his pigeon when he was 9. By 11, he was fighting for money.
Everybody would bring other kids from different neighborhoods around to fight me for money. I was really, hey, listen, I'm not showing off or bragging. I was just really a good fighter.
I have been through some real hard times, and to get through them, I believe that there was something out there, like someone had a plan for me.
And then he met Cus D'Amato, the man who saw a champion where everyone else saw a lost cause. Cus didn't just train Tyson, he designed him. He turned him into a fighter who could not only win, but destroy everything in front of him. It didn't take long for the world to notice. At 18 years old, Tyson was already knocking out grown men like they were amateurs. And by 1986, at just 20 years old, he made history, becoming the youngest heavyweight champion ever. This wasn't just boxing, this was annihilation. Nobody had ever seen a heavyweight like him before. Tyson wasn't just winning, he was obliterating his competition. 33 fights, 33 wins, 29 by knockout. Champions, legends, it didn't matter. They all fell the same way. Fast, violently, hopelessly.
Iron Mike Tyson!
By 1990, Mike Tyson wasn't just a boxer, he was an executioner. But on February 11th, 1990, the impossible happened. And what happened next would become the greatest upset in sports history. It was just another night for Mike Tyson, another opponent, another paycheck, another knockout waiting to happen. For most of his career, fights were a formality, a scheduled execution, and in Tokyo, against a 42-1 underdog, that's exactly how he saw it. But on the other side of the arena, James Buster Douglas had something Tyson didn't, a reason to fight. Just 23 days before this fight, Buster Douglas lost his mother, and instead of breaking him, it gave him something no one expected, a will to win. For the first time in his career, Buster Douglas wasn't just showing up to fight, he was showing up to win. The bell rang, and Tyson did what Tyson always did. He came forward looking for blood. But the first sign that this wouldn't be a normal fight happened almost immediately. Douglas came out firing the best jab of his career, crisp, sharp, landing clean, and for the first time in years, someone was beating Tyson to the punch. Tyson wasn't used to this. Opponents weren't supposed to fight back, they were supposed to run. But Douglas, he stood his ground. From the opening bell, Douglas wasn't fighting to survive, he was fighting to win. By the third round, something became clear. Mike Tyson wasn't prepared for this. His head movement was slower, his punches weren't as sharp, and he couldn't deal with Douglas's jab. Even in his corner, there was chaos. Tyson's team didn't have a game plan. They didn't prepare for a war. They thought this would be easy. For the first time in years, Mike Tyson was in a real fight. Douglas wasn't just surviving, he was dominating. His jab was landing at will, his right hand was finding its target, and Tyson had no answers. The Tokyo crowd, expecting a quick Tyson knockout, started to believe they were witnessing history. And in that moment, the impossible started to feel real. But no matter how well Douglas was fighting, Tyson was still Tyson. And in round 8, he reminded the world why he was the most feared man in boxing.
I've never seen.
And there's a right hand uppercut, and down goes Douglas.
Just like that, everything changed. For the first time in the fight, Douglas was down. Was this it? Had Tyson found his moment? Had Douglas's dream come to an end? Or was there still one more chapter left to be written? For 8 rounds, Buster Douglas had done the impossible. He had stood toe-to-toe with Mike Tyson. He had beaten him to the punch. He had controlled the fight, but now it looked like it was all about to fall apart. Mike Tyson had finally landed his signature punch, the same punch that had knocked out dozens of fighters before. The fight was over, right? Except it wasn't, because at the count of 8, Buster Douglas did something nobody expected. He got up. The look on Tyson's face said everything. This wasn't supposed to happen. Fighters weren't supposed to survive that uppercut. Fighters weren't supposed to fight back. But Douglas just wouldn't go away. And then something changed. Tyson wasn't hunting anymore. He was surviving. And Douglas, he was just getting started. Then came round 10, the round that would change boxing forever. Tyson had never been in this position before. Not just losing, but being beaten, outboxed, outworked, overwhelmed. Douglas smelled blood, and for the first time in his career, Mike Tyson was backing up. Then, the punch, a perfect uppercut, followed by a barrage of punches, and then, for the first time in his life, Mike Tyson hit the canvas. Tyson had never been here before. He tried to stand, tried to fight, but his body wouldn't respond. And just like that, the greatest upset in sports history was complete.
Finish things in. Oh, the uppercut. What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's over. It's over.
Mike Tyson has been knocked out.
The underdog, the man nobody believed in, the fighter who was supposed to lose, had just shocked the world. The world couldn't believe it. Mike Tyson was supposed to be invincible, but on February 11th, 1990, he wasn't. For Buster Douglas, this was the greatest night of his life. For Mike Tyson, it was the beginning of the end. But what happened next was even more shocking, because Buster Douglas's reign as champion would last only 8 months, and the fall of Mike Tyson had only just begun, because sometimes the hardest fight isn't winning the title, it's keeping it. Buster Douglas had just made history. He had done the impossible. He had beaten the unbeatable. And for one night, he was on top of the world. But what happens when the underdog becomes the champion? When the hunter becomes the hunted? For Buster Douglas, that answer came fast. The moment Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson, everything changed.
I was embraced, That was cool, nice reception when I came back. But that was a lot of demands. I got to do the talk shows.
And the news was just rocking with James Buster Douglas from Columbus, Ohio. He was like a king in this community because he represented someone getting to the top.
He wasn't just a fighter anymore. He was a superstar. There was the talk show interviews, the endorsement deals, and millions of dollars in new contracts. For years, Buster Douglas had fought in the shadows. Now he was the most famous athlete on the planet, but fame came with a cost. And that was the problem. Buster Douglas had already won his Super Bowl. He had already climbed his Everest, and deep down, he knew it.
I was embraced, I got to do the talk shows. I was all right, but I'd much rather have been just at home, just chilling.
For most champions, winning the title is the beginning. For Buster Douglas, it was the end. He stopped training as hard, his weight ballooned. He gained nearly 15 pounds before his next fight, and he was enjoying the life of a champion, but not preparing like one. Buster Douglas was no longer the man who had beaten Mike Tyson, and his next opponent knew it. Enter Evander Holyfield, the undefeated hungry challenger, a man who didn't just want the belt, he wanted to prove he was better than Tyson. On October 25, 1990, just 8 months after shocking the world, Buster Douglas stepped into the ring for his first title defense, but from the opening bell, something was wrong. The man who had fought like a warrior against Tyson was nowhere to be found. Douglas looked slower, heavier, and unfocused. One punch, that's all it took. Buster Douglas's reign as heavyweight champion was over. 42-1 underdog, the man who shocked the world, and in less than a year, it was all gone. After losing his title, Buster Douglas disappeared. He took his millions, walked away from boxing, and vanished from the spotlight. He ballooned up to nearly 400 pounds. He was diagnosed with diabetes and nearly died. He made a brief comeback in the late 90s but never returned to his former self. Buster Douglas will always be remembered for one thing: the night he shocked the world, but for him that was enough. But while Buster Douglas faded away, Mike Tyson was plotting his comeback. For Tyson, the loss to Douglas wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something darker, because what happened next would change his life forever, because Tyson's real downfall was only just beginning.